So this was their solution, and I thought it was rather smart. But still, I was sorry why women do not get to be entertained, and well, that's how it is. So maybe in the future, sometime when there is more education, more enlightenment, we women will claim their lost spaces and get to be entertained as well. I attended one. I attended one session of women, and what was it called? I don't remember the exact name, but they were women from various stratas of our society who came and told their story. And one woman came along and she said, it was so sad that we were not allowed to really step out of the house without permission or whatever. And it was only when somebody died that we got to go out. And she said, we used to wait for somebody to die, which is awful.
Good thing.
I mean, only
Imagine being in that situation where you have to wait for someone to die to be able to leave the house.
the house without really asking for permission to go, because it was a very done thing and it was okay to go on. So, that woman really amused us with her narration of how it happened back home, where they were living in a very far-flung place where, again, it, I think, boils down to lack of education. It boils down to
Mhm.
lack of, enlightenment. And
True.
like I showed in my cartoons, I mean, the guy is counting the boys. The girl is not even being counted. So that's why she says, can I be born too? That's
Mhm.
what gives me ideas about our state of affairs. Having
Right.
said that, of course, things are changing slowly and gradually, and girls and women are stepping into just about every field, which is great. Um, but yes, as far as my presentation is concerned, with cartoons and these video clips, which I'm sorry you couldn't really see properly because of the audio not being good, but I will send you the original, the source files for inserting in your the video for the web. At least then it would be more clear and maybe better heard and better displayed. Okay.
Right. We will have it put up on the Mohtarma Fatma Jinnah webpage and on the FJWU official Facebook page. And then those who missed out can also access it. We
Yeah.
have a couple of cartoons here, Nigar, if you, sorry, a couple of questions here. See how much cartoons are on my mind because of your talk. So we have a couple of questions. Are you ready for them?
Totally. I would love to hear them out.
Okay. There's an observation. Nadia Bakhtawar says your cartoons explain the traditional gender roles and experiences of an average Pakistani woman in a male-dominated media and patriarchal society. What inspired you? And here's the question. what inspired you to work on these themes? So there's two parts to this question. What inspired you to work on these themes, and what challenges did you face initially?
Okay. What inspired me is exactly what inspires every enlightened woman to have a say. And I thought at that time when I had barely graduated, I mean, I was still studying and I was missing Pakistani comics and I was missing Pakistani cartoons uh, in the form of comic strips that I thought, well, if nobody's making them, I will. And I didn't have a place, an academy, or any university department which could teach me how to do comic art. So, as I always say in my interviews, I just taught myself. I just studied a lot of comics and cartoons, and just gradually and slowly, um, I was drawing them. And my principal at that time, I had switched from pre-medical to fine arts. And so Mr. Ali Imam said to me, well, we don't have a class for or a course for comic art, but you know what you can do is you can just make these and show them to me. And I said, just like that? And he said, well, I'll lend you some books. And he lent me, how to draw cartoon series. So once I was drawing the cartoons, however good or bad, I just kept at it. I just persevered to draw cartoons. And I was picked up by a newspaper which was newly coming out from Karachi. It was called The Sun. And I was just under this, you could say, motivated pressure to produce a cartoon every day because that's what the editor wanted. And how should I say, I appealed to him that nobody is drawing daily comic strips. And he said, yes, either Gogi comes every day or she doesn't come at all. And that was a
Oh,
huge challenge. I mean, it was just a very huge challenge. I said, okay, I'll prove it. And I did. And I just made a cartoon every day, every day. And that's how I went through the mill. And I really learned how to produce a cartoon, witty, sometimes not so witty, other times funny, sometimes not so funny at other times, because that's how it is. Every creative person doesn't produce perfectly 100% artwork or creative work or a song which is perfect in every go. So after I got into it, the idea of the question, which was what inspired you, not having Pakistani comics inspired me. And how did I get along was, I said there is no female character in comics. Comics in थे तो, लेकिन when the comics were being made or the cartoons were being made, they were political cartoons. So I said my central character is going to be a female. It's going to be a young, progressive, confident, educated, enlightened woman who wants to do something. And that's Gogi for you. So she became the woman's voice in Pakistan, which is nice because at least we can have a voice, we can say and ask and question. So I don't know if I've answered your question, Bakhtawar.
yes. The second part is, what challenges did you face when you first began working on these ideas?
Challenges were finding a platform. I was lucky, I think, because I was picked up by this newspaper. And once it started appearing in the newspapers, then other newspapers wanted to have my work as well. And I was lucky there in the print media because way back, back in those days, there was no television even. And so it was just coming up, actually. The TV was coming up, and I remember working for the Sun Daily and then branching off into Dawn and the Morning News and the Mirror, the other publications, a magazine called Teenager. And I just started branching off into these publications as well. And then when television came, and I don't know how I landed in the television. All I know is that I was asked to do a cartoon story on the TV live. And that was a huge challenge. The idea was good, and I could draw, and I would practice and tell my story and draw it. And that one thing led to another, I think, uh, from the print media to the electronic media. And I think that's when TV was just starting, it was getting very popular. And so when it got popular, then a lot of my work was exposed to a large number of people. Yeah. So that, and what were the challenges? Again, finding a platform. Nowadays, after all these years and decades, actually, it's really hard to get your work into the print media because they are, it has shifted from the print media to the, I would say, the digital and the social media. So things have changed. And so getting your work into a newspaper, not so easy. So what I did for that was that I started making my comics for my Facebook page or for the social media, the Instagram and so on. Later on, when the COVID struck, I came into the YouTube channel, Gogi Studios. You can see a lot of my work there. It's called the Happy Hands. You can see it. It keeps your hands busy. So that's how it is. There'll be more questions covering a lot of more other aspects.
Yes. One other question is, what are your thoughts about introducing compulsory courses or chapters in school, college, and university to raise awareness on gender issues?
Totally. I think it's a great idea. And I think we have it. I think you have it in the Women University, the Gender Studies Department. But we need to start early. Yes, I agree. And it can be done in a very lighter way. It can be done with stories, and it can be done with illustrated stories. It can be done with cartoons, which is what I have been doing for a long time now. I've got 28 books, and a lot of them are based on, gender equity and bringing the women into a very progressive state or into a very progressive thought attitude and so on. So yes, it's a good idea, and we should push for it. I think the best way to go is to make it light, interesting, colorful story, and that's what I do. That's what my comic books are about.
Right. There's another question. How do you come up with so many ideas for creating so many stories? And
Sometimes,
then, yes, and then there's another question attached to this, and that is, how much time do you spend on brainstorming, or is it all natural?
well, Shahina is my proof. We were only talking, and she was only saying, Nigar, do something on transgender. And while we were talking, flip, something comes to my mind, and I just did it. I didn't tell her what I'm going to do, but it it was the first time that I thought, yes, we should feature the transgenders as well. So when Bud Bhai falls for this lovely hair and goes to see the face of the pretty girl, it turns out that it's a transgender. So this is how sometimes the inspiration comes in an instant, and sometimes I really have to put my mind to it. Sometimes I'd be reading the newspaper or just reading generally, and it would come. You see, a cartoonist has to keep his or her eyes and ears open for ideas, and that's what I do. And I always say I can teach draftsmanship. I can teach you how to draw cartoons, but I can't teach you how to be funny. So that, I mean,
That comes naturally.
yes, I think so. I think so. So either you have it or you don't, right?
Okay. How do you get people's attention for comics, since it's not a very popular medium as such in Pakistan? So how do you get attention?
Uh, Again, this is an industry. Comic books is an industry, and we don't have it in Pakistan, unfortunately. After 4 decades plus, I feel the way comics happened with me was that I was asked by certain organizations to I was invited to meetings and I was asked how I could address A, B, or C issue. And I would always say the best way to do it is with comics, story. Everybody likes to hear a story.
Mm-hmm.
So, so comic books can appeal, and it worked. That's how I came to do 28 comic books.
Right.
They're all on my Facebook, Gogi Studios. They're on the Instagram as well now. Another thing that happened, which these girls might not know, is that sometimes you are inspired by certain mediums. For example, I went to the hospital. I would take my kids to the hospital and I'd see how dreary everybody would be looking, sitting and glum in the hospital waiting for their turn. And I thought if we
Mm-hmm.
could have, something like a screen where we could be showing cartoons with health messages, or we could have huge murals, which I did eventually, 22 of
Mm-hmm.
them for the PIMS hospital.
Right. Where did you do the 22 murals?
I I did them in my studio, and then they were installed in the emergency department of the children's hospital.
Oh,
Uh, and
that's such a wonderful idea.
it is, and what happened was that these I when I went with the idea to the executive director of the PIMS, I said, "You've got these blank walls and you've got dreary patients sitting there waiting for their turn. Wouldn't it be nice for them to get health messages?" And he said, "Yes, we
Mhm.
never thought of that." So I had read about the Royal Infirmary Hospital in London who had tried hospital art with murals,
Okay.
uh, colorful murals. And they said that the cost of treatment went down with a child-friendly hospital because
Right, right.
when you are rushing a child to the hospital, you are under a lot of stress, and so is the child. But
True.
if you enter an environment which is child-friendly, it has got. I mean, my cartoons are like 5 by 7, 6 by 8, 6 by 10, huge murals in the
Mm-hmm.
hospital, and not one but four hospitals now. Um, so when the child enters into such a nice environment, then the child is also de-stressed. So when I gave my presentation to the executive director, he thought it was a great idea, and I was lucky to get sponsors uh, from one telecommunication company. I was on the road. There I was, churning out one after the other after the other. But the doctors at the PIMS hospital said that we would like you to put these up in the emergency ward, and reception area of the
Mm-hmm.
children's hospital, because that's where it is needed most. And they also said to me that I should not make them like cartoons, which I do as in a sequential art, where you saw today panel one, panel two, panel three. They
Mm-hmm.
were, I was suggested that they should be happy pictures, just happy pictures. So if you ever have the chance to go to the PIMS hospital and you enter the emergency department just for after permission, because you're not an emergency patient, are you? So
Mm-hmm. I hope not.
you can see that it's totally covered. The walls are totally covered with these huge Gogi cartoons where some are funny too, but then mostly they're just happy cartoons. Like, who is it? I think it's Gochi or Amir, one of the characters, was swinging from the long neck of the giraffe. And that was so liked by the creche in the Foreign Office that they requested that I put this up in the childcare area. And so there's a huge mural in the Foreign Office Children's Childcare Center. So
Right.
it's just the inspiration of keeping your mind open to it, or keeping your eyes and ears open to ideas. And that's how the buses also happen, the public buses. But that another time, or maybe later.
Okay. One more question. What are your thoughts regarding Pakistani media, which is undermining women issue by overusing the divorce trope in storylines? Does this come into your
I did a cartoon once, and I can narrate that cartoon. I was going through some archives, and it's interesting how things haven't changed very much. But what it was is that Badbhai enters the room, and Gogi's sitting on that takhat, and she's
Uh-huh.
like, she's all haggard and teary-eyed and teary-faced, and he's saying, "Oh my God, you look so miserable. Whatever happened?" And she said, "Well, I've been watching this television dramas where the girls are either crying or getting divorced or getting cheated." And he said, "Oh my God, you shouldn't be watching that much TV." So, yes, you watch TV for entertainment. You don't want to be, you're already crying outside. I mean, in reality, there are so many sob stories. You don't want to be crying when you're turning on the TV and watching a drama and, kind of. So, no, I'm not in favor of having sob stories portrayed all the time on all the channels because one is catching the attention. So they all, it's like following suit, and it's like everybody making the same thing, and not pleasant. It
Mhm.
has to be entertaining. And that's what I think about it.
Right. Okay. A very technical question. How long does it take for you to translate the idea into a comic book or a sketch?
We'll start with the sketch first. How long? Now, this morning when I sat with this cartoon that I had to draw, and because yesterday I had a Zoom meeting with another international NGO, and I had to really, really study for that because it was really a very challenging subject. Um, it was like cultural diversity as a tool of conflict resolution. So I wanted to say it with my cartoons, and so I was really busy with that. So I had only this morning to do these two cartoons. That so the idea, if it's crystallized and you've got it written out. So in my interviews, I always say, look, I don't draw directly, I write.
Mhm. Mhm.
And this is what cartoonists do. Well, at least I do it this way. I write my idea, I write the caption, I do thumbnails. Okay,
Mhm.
it's going to be a 2-panel cartoon, a 3-panel cartoon, or a 4-panel cartoon, or maybe just a
Mhm.
single panel cartoon. So when I've written out my idea, I place it in sequential art in various panels. And once I've got the thumbnails done, then it's easy. Then I just brush it away. Then I use ink and brush, or I use not a nib pen, I use a brush pen. So I like it when the lines, and this is again for the fine arts girls, that you want to draw a live line, not a dead line. When you do it with a marker, it's a dead line. When you do it with a brush, it's thick and thin, and that's very pretty. So that's what I did. So once I've got my idea crystallized, and sometimes it could take a long time, then executing it is not so hard. And if you are a good uh, or skilled drawing person, and you can draw fairly quickly, then for me it takes like 2 hours to 3 hours to finish it. Um, and if I want to color it, of course, that takes another 1 hour or so.
That's
Yeah.
fast. But then you have had so much practice that you do really work fast now. I think we have one last question. Um, Naira wants to know who was your strongest support when you started? Because you have to have a support group or at least one person who supports you throughout everything.
Well, I would say way back in my days, it was not as support. It was, you want to do this, go ahead, find your way and do it. It was not like somebody taking me up to an editor and saying, please try her out or give her a chance. It wasn't like that. So my
Mhm.
support was in not being objected to doing what I wanted to do. And I have a very funny story there if there is time. I don't know. I'm not looking at my watch.
Yes,
But
we have time. We have all the time for stories.
okay. Well, I was in Karachi doing comic, uh, what was it called? There was the Habib College, the beautiful Habib University, where I was sitting with the students of fine arts and graphic design, and I was telling them my story about how I started and what were the challenges and so on and so forth. And I did, and my brother was visiting from Canada, and he was in the audience too, and he can be very naughty. So he said, and I said, yes, I used to go to the office on Chandigarh Road in Karachi, and I would take my under my arm. I would have my cartoon, either half done or completed, and handing it over to the Department of Printing and so on and so forth. And my challenge, as is the challenge even to this day for a lot of girls, is commuting, going from one place to the other.
True.
And so I would ask my brother if he could get a rickshaw for me. And that was the mode of travel. So I would go in the rickshaw. And it's so funny. He said, "Don't worry about the rickshaw. I will take you on my motorbike." Okay. So I hopped on his motorbike. And as was usual, the motorbike stopped in the middle of my my travel to the office. And he said,
Mhm.
don't worry, I will fix it in no time. And now he's telling this story to the audience, and he's saying, that's what she did. She just she said that I was willing to sit on the motorbike because I don't have to wait for a rickshaw, and I was taking it, and my motorbike broke down. I couldn't help it. And so he said that the next thing, while I was fixing it, Nigar was waiting on the side, and in no time, she found a rickshaw. She hopped onto the rickshaw, and by the time I had finished, I said, "Where are you?" And she was going along in the rickshaw. And she said, "Bye." It was so funny because everybody was laughing. And I said, "Oh my God, you didn't have to." I was getting late. I couldn't help it. Yeah. So that's one story about support. You asked about my support. You know what, girls? If you want to do anything and you really, really want to, you can. There's nobody stopping you. There's nobody, and don't wait for that push or encouragement from anywhere. And least of all, the people around you. I mean, if you're married and you're expecting your husband to encourage you, go, 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 do, do, do. No, don't even expect it. So when you don't expect it, then you're fired up with motivation to do what you want to do. And that's how I did it. I mean, my best, I'm very grateful that nobody objected to that, or nobody said that you should not. I just did. One more story that I might as well tell about, again, support, is when I was doing my pre-medical, and I got into the science department, and I wasn't terribly enjoying it because I didn't want to really do all that. I wanted to get into fine arts. But because I was living in the hostel and my parents were, in Karachi after retirement, I was on my own, and I just pleaded with my mother, and I said, "Listen, can I defer for 1 year, just 1 year? Can I do what I really want to do for 1 year?" And because they were far, they couldn't really force me day and night. So I said, "Just give me a chance." Now, I was a scholarship holder, mind you. I was getting scholarship for studying in my graduating undergrad. So I said, "Let me at least try it. Then I will come back to what you want me to do." And I just went into the fine arts department. The seats were all filled and everything was closed, but I just went up to the teacher and I said, "Listen, I want to be admitted here, and can I get a chance to?" And she said, "Okay, take a test. You're in the end of it. We've almost closed our admission." And she let me take a test. I still remember what I had to draw. China, it was a basket. वो जो बुनी हुई basket होती है woven. It was a basket.
Okay.
It was a still life. It was just sitting on
Uh-huh.
that table.
Uh-huh.
it was a basket with something, maybe a vase or something, and some dried flowers. And I had to draw that. And I was just enjoying it. I was drawing it. It was so fun for me. By the time I finished, she said, you can take a seat right over there. I bunked my classes as a monitor and joined the fine arts department with no problem. So it's the passion. What I'm telling the girls is it's the passion. When you've got the passion, it works. Right?
Right, right. Well, thank you very much, Nigar. This has been wonderful. And I'm sure everyone has enjoyed it. We've had very good attendance today. We've had a couple of very interesting questions. What we would like you to do is to share with us the videos that we could not see properly or where we could not hear the sound, so that when we put it up on the web page, our own communications department will tinker with it and edit it so that it comes out as a really good video. So thank you very much. It's been wonderful having you. It's always a pleasure having you, and we look forward to more sessions in COVID-free times. Thank
Inshallah.
you very much.
And thank you for
And
having me. It's always fun. And I'm sorry I went through so many glitches because there was a very tight timeline for me. And we couldn't do it perfectly and smoothly, but I enjoyed it. And I hope you enjoyed as much as I enjoyed delivering this lecture. Thank you.
thank you. Wonderful having you always.
Thank you.
A big thank you to the Department of Communication and Media Studies for helping us, of course, to the IT people for their technical support, and to all of you students. We're signing out now, and we hope to see you in future webinars also. Thank you very much, Nigar, and thank you to all the participants.
Thank you.
Allah Hafiz.